Welcome to the Knowledge Gumbo podcast, where we mix together timeless wisdom and thought provoking stories using quotes, sayings, proverbs, and book passages, primarily by Black women. I am your curious minded host, Alicia Thomas. What if the key to unlocking your true potential lies in one simple truth, being unapologetically yourself? Today, we dive into the powerful words of Marva Collins, an amazing educator who defied the odds to transform lives. Trust yourself, think for yourself, act for yourself, speak for yourself, be yourself. Imitation is suicide. Again, by Marva Collins. She accumulated numerous accolades, awards, honorary degrees, one including being nominated for Secretary of Education twice, specifically by Ronald Reagan. And she declined the offer because she chose instead to remain focused on grassroots education, on teaching children, on teaching other educators her methods of teaching. Looking at this quote, there is a danger in imitating. And one of the biggest things that's dangerous about it is when pressure comes, your true self comes out. So if you've been faking it, trying to either impress people, trying to be something that you're not, when the pressure is high, your true self comes out. And believe it or not, that's like a key to a lot of these social media influencers. They portray a part, they create a character, but then when you meet them in person, you're sorely disappointed because they've created this whole caricature of who they are or who they want us to think that they are. And then you meet them in person and they're totally different and they don't know how to quote unquote stay on, which I think leads to a lot of this fake burnout, is because you get tired of playing a role of being something that you're not. There's a freedom in being yourself. There's a freedom in just saying the good and the bad about yourself. I was listening to another awesome podcast called The Perrys, with the Perrys, and Jackie Hill Perry was making a statement that she tells the good and the bad, and she doesn't really trust people who are not willing to be open and honest about both. And a lot of people aren't because they don't want people coming for them and attacking them. But when you're inauthentic, you leave space and room for people to come in and undermine your integrity and your authority because you're not being honest. And that imitation will kill your reputation. And that's in essence what it's saying at the bottom of imitation is suicide. It kills everything that you built up. It takes a long time to create trust, to show yourself as an authority on whatever the situation is, whether it's at work, whether it's in a relationship. It takes time to build up that trust, that foundation. But if you're not being true to yourself, it just takes a minute to kill it all. And it's down and people don't no longer trust you. You don't even trust yourself. Because if you trust yourself, you're okay being you. And if someone doesn't like the real you, they're free to leave the same way they were free to come in. That's the way I tend to look at it. Like, hey, if you don't like me the way I am, you came in on your own, you can leave on your own. And to me, it's the same way romantic relationships. You need to show up as yourself because eventually you'll get tired of that facade and you need to relax. It's kind of like when you come home, ladies, when you come home and you pull your bra off and your girls go, you got to do it. And if you're putting on the front and eventually you got to pull it off so that you can go and release it and feel good about it. And there's a power in being authentic because you remove elements of fear because you're walking in truth. You're walking in being who you are. You're thinking your own thoughts. You're doing in actions that you want to do that's based on your thoughts. Because what they say, how you think, hopefully, then you speak, or then you act. And when you're authentic, you don't have to remember what you said if what you said previously isn't true. You don't have to remember, oh, I did it this way because I wanted people to think this. No, when you're authentic, you just move. You go, you be, you are who you are. And it takes courage to speak for yourself, to act for yourself. It's a courageous act because no one wants to be attacked. No one wants to be criticized. No one wants to be picked apart. But the person that's coming in and criticizing you and breaking you down, either they're uncomfortable with themselves, they've either put you in a box where they're comfortable with you being that, and then by you not sitting in that box for them, they come and attack you. But you have to have the courage to just be yourself and know that relationships will come and go. As they say, some people are only here for a season, some people are here for a reason, and very few people are here for a lifetime. Sometimes a person, even in a season or for a reason, have lifetime impact, but that doesn't mean that person is meant to be in your life for a lifetime. So we have to step out on faith and be able to speak and act in truth, in the truth. Because I don't know, it really bugs me. And I really would like to eventually get into some conversations with people about it. But I have issues with saying, act on your truth, walk in your truth, do this. Their truth does not have levels to it. It's either true or it's not true. In truth, there are no shades of gray. So in this instance, though, we need to be courageous enough to do what we need to do, say what we need to say, act the way we need to act. That's a full and complete representation of ourselves. And in that same way, even when you're being authentic, that doesn't mean you need to share or say everything to everybody. I had a mentor once that told me that sometimes your story is meant for certain people. It's not meant for common everyday conversation. You share your story, you share your testimony to help other people. Because if you just tell it to everybody in any kind of situation, it becomes more about you and less about the wisdom and the knowledge or just being helpful to other people. So take the onus off of it being about you and make it about other people, to be honest and open and sharing and helping other people grow and helping yourself become better and more distance from whatever that situation is, that it becomes a lesson. That test became your testimony, but your testimony isn't necessarily meant to be shared with everyone. Each testimony has a purpose and a focus. It's not everyday chit chat, everyday chatter. And when you look at people who have the courage to be themselves, people come to mind like Simone Biles. I really am a fan of how she addresses people who attack her. She is unapologetically herself. Another one that comes to mind is Staley, the coach for the women's basketball team at the University of South Carolina. I remember watching a documentary where she was on one of the episodes talking about leadership, and she talked about how the team didn't have an identity. They weren't true to anything. And there was no rhyme or reason to the players that were being brought in. And before she could create the powerhouse that it is now, she had to create a culture, something that was true to who she was as a coach, to who the school needed to be as a team, and create a community of supporters that were willing to support this team, understanding that these girls were going to work hard, they were going to study hard, they were going to become amazing on and off the basketball court, but she had to start from the ground and be true and honest about it. And one of the things that I really like about Dawn Staley is, I don't know if you've heard the story of Peck, is the first African American woman to coach a national championship team in women's basketball. She sent a piece of her championship net to Dawn Staley to encourage her, saying, I know you're going to be one of the next up and coming coaches and you're going to win this. And then when you win it, you'll have your own net and you can send this back. When she did win a championship, she wanted to pay that faith forward. Instead of just sending a piece to one up and coming coach, she sent pieces of her championship net to a multitude of up and coming Black coaches, letting them know that they can do this too if they're willing to create the systems and the coaching that they need and be true to themselves. They can get to where she is. She is not the only one. She has left clues for other people to follow. They just have to put in the work. They just have to be willing to trust themselves, to act accordingly, to don't act according to what the school thinks a coach is, what the school thinks the team should be, to be honest and authentic as a coach and as a woman. And I saw a quote also by her a while back that said, I don't just coach games. I build people. I build legacies. That, my friends, is a powerful statement. And because you know where you're going, she has these values and goals in mind, she can easily tell when she's going off track and not being herself and not going after what she says she wants to go to. So we have to have these systems in place. We have to have these goals, these core values of what we're striving for. And that allows us to be even more authentic so that we understand if we start veering to the left or the right, wait a minute, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. It doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with my goals. Let me move back over to the path that I need to be on to get to that point. And Marva Collins epitomizes this as well because she founded the West Side Preparatory School in Chicago back in the 70s because her children weren't getting a quality education. And she so believed in children's ability to learn that she took $5,000 of her own money to start this school because she was so disillusioned by the educational system and their neglect of poor Black students. And her learning methods really emphasize that every child can learn and a child's failure is not the child's fault, it's the teacher's fault. And she broke down education and helped these kids learn and grow and become more than the regular public school system looked at these kids being able to be. She had high expectations for her students because many of her students were labeled unteachable in a traditional school setting. And she was able to get them to grow and to thrive. In her school, they had targets of by Christmas of their first year in school at Westside Prep, they will be reading at a third grade level. By sixth grade, they will be using high school text. And one of the key things too, as me encouraging Black women and people in general to write down their stories, share their life wisdoms, at Westside Prep, they had daily composition and it was necessary. So you learn how to write, you learn how to articulate your thoughts, to put things together effectively. Check down in the show notes and the YouTube description. I will link an old video that was taken of her school showing some of her teaching methods. I'm a big fan of hers, have been for a long time because I used to do a lot of tutoring and I also ran a program at my church for high school students, just having a place to hang out and talk and be able to get things off their mind as as well as, school and other things of that nature. And I wanted to figure out ways that I could reach these kids. And so I read her books on education because I wanted to know how to embrace these kids to to be my authentic self, especially for the church kids that I was helping. Because as a church kid, a lot of times you just get told to do it because I said so, or do it this and do that, but we don't explain the things behind what we're saying we're doing or what we're telling or encouraging the children to do. And that was very frustrating for me. And a lot of times as well, in these situations, whether it was tutoring I was doing at a middle school or whether, like I said, it was mentoring kids at my church, you have to meet kids where they are. And that's a part of being authentic. This is where they are. And this is where I need to go to build them up to get them to where they need to be. But if you're not willing to address people and deal with people as they are, because that's kind of like the same thing as you want to date someone and you're dating on potential, but you're not dealing with where they are right now. If where they are right now is where they're going to stay, can you live with that? But that's another conversation for another day. In this instance, though, we're looking at she was so confident in children's ability to learn and teaching them to think for themselves, where she would challenge students and tell them that they were wrong about something they were saying, but encouraging them to say, if you know this is right and you know this is true, don't let even me as a teacher who's supposed to be authority figure convince you that something is wrong that is right. That the teacher is not, it's not a dictatorship and they're not the end all be all authority. You're not going to be disrespectful, but if you know what you know to be true, you got to stand on that truth and not be afraid to defend effectively your point. So let's look at this week's challenge. Inspire the entire Knowledge Gumbo family, especially me, by sharing a quote about authenticity that moves you. Help us grow this channel. Help me grow in my personal knowledge by sharing your favorite quote, about authenticity. Because I'm always up for a challenge. I'm always up to learn. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a Black woman. It would be nice, but it's not necessary. I like to learn. I don't want to limit myself to just one area. The reason for this podcast, of course, as you know, is that our voices have been muted for so long that I wanted a place that Black women's voices were the primary voices being told. Eventually, as we go along, I will be sharing other things by men and by non-melanated people. But right now, I really want to focus and get our voices out there, get our wisdom out there, looking at things from our perspective. And like I said previously, I'm a big fan of Marva Collins, have been, of her teaching methods, of how she embraces children, how her thoughts on education, her thoughts on how teachers should hold themselves. And I think it's critical and crucial for us, whether we're teachers or not, to take some of this wisdom and apply it to our own children, especially when it comes to the area of Black history, because they're not getting that in schools. But also just her basic understanding of phonics and teaching kids phonics to help them learn how to sound out words and help them learn how to spell. Little basic things that she taught that are lifelong lessons that will carry a child and make them confident no matter the educational situation. You know, you might come in being labeled one thing, but you'll come out knowing how great you are. And that's why she's telling these children to understand and trust in themselves, to be honest. When you're an honest person, when you're honest with yourself, you can stand 10 toes down no matter who's trying to push you down, because you know what you know and you carry that. You carry that in the way you speak, you carry that in the way you walk, you carry that in the way you talk, You carry that in the way you give. It's an amazing thing to know, as I say, to know what you know and to know that well and to not get sidetracked. It's an amazing way to go. And it is a fantastic quote. It's so fantastic. I do have it, if you see, on the shelf. I keep it. I created a poster for it that resides on my shelf so that I see it every day, because we have to have reminders, because we're overloaded with information these days. We're overloaded with other people's opinions that they're trying to press upon you. We're overloaded with people that trying to convince you that it's raining when they're peeing on your head. Excuse the reference, but that's the one that first came to mind. You're being bombarded by people who are trying to convince you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. And that is madness. But when we know who we are, when we are truly authentic and we are truly being ourselves, there is a peace that passes all understanding when you do that. Thank you for stopping by the podcast today. This podcast has been recorded, both audio and video, by Ecamm. Ecamm helps you show up organized and structured for your meetings, for your podcast, for your live streams, and like this podcast for offline recordings. To find out more about Ecamm Live, click the link in the description or in the show notes. If you have any questions, drop me a note, drop me an email at aliciatsays.com, and I'll get back to you with it. Thank you for spending your time in our gumbo kitchen. Please leave a positive review and comment about the challenge below. Remember, you are enough. Our stories and our voices, they matter. You are always welcome to pull up a chair, to bring a friend to the table, because there's always room for one more. The gumbo is hot and made with love, and we will see you next week.
Gather round, y'all. It's time to groove.